Hey YouTube, 86M Star here. So I'm going to do something today that I've kind of been putting off a little bit for various reasons, but I'm going to do the follow-up video to the original 300F video that I shot a couple years ago. So in order to do this, I guess I'm going to have to tell you a story. And I'm going to start by saying that I don't want this to come off as a hate video or anything like that, and I'm going to leave the name of the shop out, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of comments of people telling me what they think really happened. I put all this behind me at this point, and basically I'm pretending like it didn't happen. I may or may not have gotten taken. We'll leave it at that. So we'll start at the beginning of last season, and this will explain why you saw a lot of videos of me riding the 250 Ninja. This bike was down for the entire season last year. It started at the beginning, one of the first rides of the year, the bike locked up on me, the motor locked up. It was taken to a motorcycle shop, and I'm not going to mention which one, but it was taken to a Honda dealership. And they had the bike for a couple weeks, and he called me, and his words to me were, I have bad news and I have real bad news. He said the bad news was the motor was locked up, and that it was going to need rebuilt, and that the real bad news was it wasn't going to be covered by warranty because the oil filter had been put in backwards. And I'm just going to gloss over this real quick. I don't believe, I'm the one that did the oil filter, and with all my heart, I don't believe that that's what happened. I don't think that it's possible. And without getting into it too much, I also don't believe that if that had happened, that the bike would not have given me a low oil pressure warning. But for whatever reason, I let it go. It is what it is, and excuse me, I ended up eating part of that. So he told me also that the motor wasn't going to be able to be rebuilt right away because Honda had done a recall on the bottom end of this engine. I believe it was for a crank journal or something to that effect. So essentially the bike needed to be, the engine needed to be tore down and rebuilt. So we'll skip ahead a little bit. They had the bike for the rest of the summer, and when it all came out and was said and done, because the engine had to come out to have the crank replaced in it under warranty or under a recall, I saved a bunch of money on taking the engine out, taking it down, and putting it back together and putting it back in, and I essentially only had to pay for the heads, which he told me were smoked from oil starvation due to the fact of what we talked about before. So, okay, so I'll give you the number. It ended up being $1,500 out of my pocket. So now I'll tell you the rest of it. So I went down and picked up the bike from the dealership, and it's a little bit of a drive. We'll call it an hour. Went down, picked it up, and rode it home. As soon as I got home, I decided I've told you before, I like to fill my bikes up at home. I keep gas cans at home, that way I don't have to go to gas stations, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I was gonna fill the bike up when I got it home, and I put the key into the gas cap, and it wouldn't open the gas cap. So they were closed by then, so I called him the next day, and I said, hey, listen, I'm having a problem. I think that you guys have swapped my gas cap or something because my key doesn't fit the gas cap anymore. It doesn't unlock it. And he says, well, what do you mean? I said, well, I put the key in it and it doesn't open it. And he's like, well, there's no way we swapped the gas cap because all your parts were kept together the entire time the bike was here. I said, oh, okay, but I mean, it doesn't open. He's like, well, are you sure you're putting the key in right? I said, well, it's a two-sided key. I tried it both ways. I'm relatively versed on using automotive keys. So I don't see any way that I've made a mistake, but it's not working. He says, well, the only thing I can tell you now is bring it in and we'll take a look at it. Keep in mind, again, this is an hour away. And so I said, well, shoot. And I could see I wasn't really getting anywhere, so I ended the conversation as pleasantly as I could. I have not gotten rude at this point at all. There's no reason to get blown up and mad about it, but I knew something wasn't right, and I knew it wasn't on me. I thought about it the rest of the day while I was at work, and I thought, you know, there was a funny thing about the sticker. There was a lawyer sticker here on the tank when I got the bike. And those kinds of things drive me nuts, and I took it off. But when I picked the bike up, there was a sticker on the tank, and I thought to myself, well, maybe I forgot to take that off or whatever, and I didn't give it too much thought. But then it played in my head later while I was at work that, yeah, I'm sure I took that sticker off there, and there's a sticker back on the tank. So I went home and I dug through some raw footage that I'd shot the summer before, and sure enough, there's the tank with no sticker on it, and the one that's on the bike sitting in front of me had a sticker on it. I said, well, okay, so I'll call him back with this information. I said, listen, let me just talk to the service manager. So he gets on the phone, and I said, you know, this is what's happened. And he tried to interrupt me again and tell me there's no way that happened. I said, listen, I've got video footage that my tank didn't have a sticker on it when I brought it to you, and this tank definitely has a sticker on it. So the tank has either been swapped, or for some reason you guys decided to re-sticker the tank. Is there any reason why you would have put the lawyer sticker back on the tank? He says, well, no, let me look into it and call you back. So he calls me back and he says, well, we found your tank. It's on a brand new bike sitting on our showroom floor. So apparently somehow they did get swapped. We don't know how this happened. And then he kind of made the joke of, I guess it happens the same way that a filter accidentally gets put in backwards. Which, I'm not going to lie, I took that comment pretty hard, but I let it go. I said, well, what are we going to do about this? And he says, well, we'll figure it out. We'll send somebody down to get the bike and and they're going to work it out. So it ended up being, he sent a guy down with my gas tank to my house, and they swapped the gas tank at my house. Great. Problem solved. I'm as happy as I'm going to be at this point about the situation. I didn't have to go back another hour drive twice, there, an hour there and an hour back. So the next time I rode the bike, it started to give me some problems and act like it didn't want to idle at stop signs, and it didn't want to stay running, essentially. So I thought, well, the tank they put on here had bad gas in it or something. So I called him back and was basically given the same story. Well, you'll have to bring it in so we can look at it. Well, they worked with me on getting the tank swapped out, and I'm a rather agreeable person most of the time, or I like to think I am. So I said, okay, I'll bring the bike back in. I didn't want to, but I did. So I made the trip back an hour and dropped it off, and made the trip back home again another hour. He calls me a couple days later and says, yeah, we found the problem. It was a bad spark plug. I said, okay, that's weird. Since you rebuilt the motor, I'm sure the bill, or I actually went back and looked, the bill charged me for a new spark plug, so that spark plug didn't. He's like, well, there's possibly a defective spark plug from the factory or whatever. It's sorted out now. Come and get your bike. La-da-da-da-da. So drive an hour back, pick up the bike, ride it back an hour. When I get back home, I'm not even quite home yet, and the bike starts acting up. As soon as I got off the highway and stopped at the first light, it started acting the same way again. So I called him back and told him, hey, listen, this thing's acting up, la-da-da. He said, well, bring it back in. I said, no, I don't want to do that. You guys need to come back down here, and you need to get the bike, and you need to make this right, because I don't want to make the hour trip again. I just made a 2-hour round trip to do this, and you didn't get it right. Come and fix it. So a few days later they did. They sent a guy down, picked up the bike, took it back, called me a few days later and told me that they had put it on the dyno machine, and that they couldn't find the problem, so they put it on the dyno machine, and that the coil pack was bad. Once the coil pack was heating up, it was cutting in and out, and that was causing the spark plug to foul. And also he also told me that since I had put the aftermarket pipe on it, he tried to allude to the fact that that might be causing me some problems. And said, well, you know, I don't know what the pipe has to do with the coil pack. He kind of got off that a little bit when I kind of went around with him a little bit, but essentially at that time, what he was really trying to do was upsell me on a fuel system for the bikes. Basically tell me, since you put the exhaust system on the bike, you really need to have the power commander and some other things done to it to upgrade the fuel system at obviously a lot of money to do that, which I wasn't interested in doing on a 300. I mentioned in the original video, I only put the pipe on there to make a little bit of noise. But he said that it was causing it to run a little bit lean. And I said, well, can you define a little bit? Are we still within what they consider the specs? And after kind of pinching him on the point, he finally conceded that, yeah, it's still within specs. It doesn't technically need it, but it would run better if you had it. Okay, great. So I'm not interested in doing that. Fail on the upsell. Then he tells me that the bike's done and I can come and get it, and he gives me an outrageous price on what it was going to cost me to fix it. The labor for taking the coil out, the new coil, the labor for putting the coil back in, and of course you get all the shop fees and the dyno run. At which point, this is probably the first time that I got what I would say past polite. I said, that's ridiculous. That's not right. That's not anywhere near where the way this should go down. He said, well, the bike's out of warranty. The bike only had a 1-year warranty on it, due from the factory, which that is what that is, but still the bike didn't have 3,000 miles on it and had a bad coil pack. And this is a shop I'd bought several motorcycles from, and I felt like they wasn't taking care of it the way they should have. And I alluded to the fact that, look, you guys already mixed up the gas tank, and there's no telling whose coil pack basically went back into my bike. And that was kind of my stand on it too. It was like, well, who knows what coil pack went back into it if the right gas tank didn't even go back on it? How do I know that's my coil pack? And all the hoops that I've had to jump through to get this bike back. You've had it for almost an entire season now. So skip ahead a couple days. Me and Mad Dog go down to pick it up. And when I walked in the door, I was kind of half expecting to have to go through a bunch of, I was going to end up having to pay some more money, and I was going to leave there not satisfied. He came out and immediately told me that they had wrote the coil pack and the labor and the dyno run off, and that it was going to be free of charge. So apparently he had gone back and talked to somebody, and they decided after our conversation on the phone that that was the right thing to do, which I believe it was. I don't believe I was taking advantage of them, and I do believe that I'd already been taken advantage to up until that point. So I got the bike back, and since then, essentially it was the end of the season, so I rode it a couple times, and then this season you guys have seen the bike a lot, and it's ran great. No problems with it whatsoever since then. So I can say that after all the problems and the $1,500 I had to sink into it, the bike is back and running good. Now, it changed my perception of the bike a little bit. I don't feel all warm and fuzzy about the bike anymore. I just, it's kind of one of those things that's let me down. I thought I would kind of get over it, and so this summer I've ridden it, and it's still in the back of my mind every ride that, this bike's given me a lot of problems in the past. Whether that's fair or not, that's in my mind that, man, I hope this thing doesn't leave me sitting today. I don't know how far I want to take it or whatever. So at some point, at this point, I'm not happy with the bike, I guess. It runs great, it rides great, but it's not what I want anymore. So at some point, this will probably be getting replaced. Now I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to today, which is what made me bring all this back up in my head and how we ended up here, and like me telling you a story I didn't want to tell. This is something dumb. I'm at the point now where I just lost a high beam headlight, so I'm going to go ahead and replace the high beam today, and that kind of brought it up the fact that, hey, we haven't talked about all the problems this bike's given me. Now, this is obviously a little thing, but it did kind of, like I say, flash back to the fact of all the troubles I've had with the bike, and made me want to think about it, and decided to finally share this with you. It's painful for me to deal with for whatever reason. It's a hard thing for me to have to tell this story. So I don't know what you guys can take away from this. I hope you enjoyed the story, and let me show you real quick on how to change this light bulb out.